Today's going to be a great day. In the studio today is Rick Reynolds, who was my original mentor, who has basically saved my life. Rick is known both nationally and internationally as one of the top in the entire business of saving marriages and helping those in crisis. He's been doing this close to 40 years, and we've spent countless hours in your office.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say I was his toughest, but I probably would be in the top 10 of most difficult clients. I owe my life to Rick. We're going to have some great discussions today. Most importantly, we want to do all we can to help you and to help your spouse and really help whatever recovery path that you're on. So thanks for joining us today. We're going to have a lot of fun.
You bet.
Well, at least this is a little bit more gracious than me fighting with you for all those years.
Absolutely.
We still kind of fight now on just fun things, but I think we spent so much time early on navigating through my defensiveness. And I was incredibly defensive. And Samantha would attest to the fact that if there was any kind of, broach into me and my choices without kind of validating, well, Samantha should have done this and this, I would get defensive. So, help these couples understand, why do predominantly unfaithful spouses get so defensive in these kinds of discussions and situations?
Well, I think there are probably several reasons. One of them is what I call right fights. It's where one person is talking about facts and what you did. Samantha may talk about what you did, and then you feel misunderstood because that wasn't your intent. And so one person's arguing about the facts and one person talks about intent. And so, that it comes off as defensive. For instance, one time Steph and I were going on a trip, or just going to a date somewhere, and I was trying to get her to hurry up. She was getting dressed, and I was trying to say, honey, you're so beautiful. Don't worry about the makeup. Let's just get out of here. I was trying to be funny when I said it. Well, what she heard was, because the makeup's not going to do any good anyway, and she suddenly blew up, and she said, you just insulted me. And I said, no, I was trying to pay you a compliment. She said, no, you insulted me. No, I was trying to pay. So we had a huge fight, and I'm being really defensive because ultimately I really was trying to pay her a compliment. But the fact was, she was insulted. So, for about 2 to 3 weeks, I would try to make amends. I'd say, hey, look, I know you really felt insulted when I did that, but, and the second I would say that but, she would blow because I'm being defensive again. And I'm saying, but I was trying to pay you a compliment.
So it gets into that point where we, in this scenario, the unfaithful, we want our motives to be
exactly seen as because we see our motives very different.
Right.
Or we see their behavior as something. And so finally, and that's what a right fight is. You're both right to some extent, but the defensiveness is the problem of we really want to be understood instead of just seeking to understand. And so finally, about 3 weeks later, I'm going, we're never going to have sex again. This is crazy. So we go to bed, and I just say, hey, honey, look, I know that you were really insulted when I said that, and I just hope you can forgive me. And because I wanted to say that but so bad, but I knew we couldn't move beyond it as long as I said the but.
Why do you think, because I am a master at that, Samantha, and this was early on, but, what I did was wrong, but if you'd had more sex, been a better encourager, didn't treat me, why do we as an unfaithful, hold on to that? But why are we so compelled?
Because it's the only way that we can push away our guilt and our shame. When you've got that much guilt and shame, it's actually called distancing. If I can distance myself and say, but you did this and you did this, which explains why I'm doing this.
Because we're trying to make ourselves
feel
better.
We push away our guilt and our shame with the defensiveness. That's exactly what we're doing. But then we blame the other person and start to find the bad guy fight.
Now explain that, because if Samantha was watching, she would graciously agree. We have a PhD in find a bad guy. But for those that don't understand that, What is a couple doing when they're trying to find the bad guy?
So find the bad guy is if either one of the couple, you or Samantha, are feeling attachment distress, because you've come home late or you've done something or she did something. We'll sit there and we'll kind of say, hey, why didn't you call? Why didn't you? And at that point, what she's looking for is, honey, I hate that I hurt you or worried you. I'm so sorry. Da, da, da.
She wants me in this
So she wants to reconnect.
To own it, though.
Right.
And to reconnect.
To let her know that, okay, I get it. I hurt you when I did that. I feel horrible. But what we tend to do is, and find the bad guy, so we don't feel that guilt and that shame, we'll say, well, you didn't tell me I had to call. You didn't give me a curfew. So then we blame them for why we didn't do what we did with our defensiveness. And then they blow up and say, and you start blaming each other in kind of a blame cycle until it just totally blows up. And that's find the bad guy, trying to find whose fault it is.
Because if I can make it your fault, Samantha, I'm going to feel better. I'm going to look better. And then I don't have to own my stuff. I can just say, well, you need to own your stuff. If you'd own your stuff, I'd own my stuff.
Right. I mean, the problem with Stephanie and our little fight was that there were two separate conversations. We needed one conversation about what the behavior was. We needed a totally separate conversation about what my motive may have been. But you can't have those two conversations at the same time because they're two separate conversations.
And obviously, we're talking about, simple things. We're not in the middle of flooding.
Oh, yeah.
An incredible emotional duress. When a couple hits this point, and we've identified find the bad guy, what is a better way? Let's say that after watching some of this video, they think, you know what we're finding the bad guy. How do you diffuse find the bad guy?
If you can just at least listen to the other person, and at one level, if they're feeling really hurt and you can validate their emotion, they're hurt, you can say, I feel terrible that I made you feel like that.
And just leave it at that.
And leave it at that. Then things change. I mean, one of the things with especially the unfaithful that we do, there's a whole other thing even besides find the bad guys where we feel misunderstood. Let's say that your mate's recounting what you did or saying that you did something,
right.
Or maybe they're telling you why you did what you did.
Okay.
Immediately back to motive, we're going to sit there because we go crazy if someone tells us how we feel or why we did what we did. And we immediately want to jump in there and say, no, that is not what I felt. That's not why I did what I did. It has nothing to do with whether I loved you or didn't love you or anything like that. If you can listen, what I try to teach guys, if you'll listen for 5% of what's right and what they're saying, and just agree with the 5%, especially if there's flooding, let the rest of it go. That's for another conversation.
Here's the unfaithful struggle, and I was very good at this, is that one of the unfaithful struggle, man or woman, we hear what you've just described, and there may be truth of 80%, but there's this little 20% or 15% that's not true. I knew that I would jump on that 15 or 20%.
Right. That's wrong.
Why do we do that?
We want to protect our image. We don't want to be seen that badly. We feel misunderstood. We want to correct where they're wrong. And the problem is they're not going to hear the correction because it's defensiveness.
That's exactly right. Samantha would never hear me in those moments.
Right, she can't.
Because what is she hearing that is causing her to not be able to hear me? Because I would fight tooth and nail to get her to hear, my justifications or my mentality. And I wasn't really trying to pull the wool over her eyes, but I was fighting for some kind of clarity. Why? Why do we fight for that?
Because you want to, as long as they don't see you the way you want to be seen, it's almost like you're experiencing an attachment distress. You want to know that you matter to Samantha.
Right.
You want to know you're important to her, that she wants to be with you, and as long as she sees you as, a demon or whatever, it's like you're hurt. So you're trying to change her perspective. But instead of trying to understand, both people are trying to be understood simultaneously, and ain't nobody understanding nothing. And at least I have the control of changing it. So with Steph and I in that situation on the compliment, I was trying to pay her a compliment, by the way, but we got in bed one night, and I said, we're never going to have sex again. I said, this is up. So I finally just said, look, Steph, I know you felt insulted when I did that, and I hope you can forgive me. Because I didn't want to say but you got to know. And so then she didn't say anything. And I really got pissed off.
Yes.
Because now I'm going, she's already asleep, and I'm going to have to do it again.
Because I don't know, maybe it's narcissism, or maybe it's just the wanting to stroke to be validated, because here's where we blow it, and I'm so good at this, is that we feel like, hey, we've now owned it, or we've acted right. Celebrate us. Look how good we're being.
Exactly.
Why? Why do we do that?
Because we want to know where all that, we want to know they think we're great. We want to repair how they see us.
So we want to repair how they see us, but we're terrified of being this wide open, vulnerable.
Right.
So here's a good moment. Okay. What can a betrayed spouse do, man or woman, to help that unfaithful who is being very Samuel-like, who doesn't want to be vulnerable and just lay themselves open? How can the betrayed, now, what I'm not saying is cater to their narcissism or cater to their dysfunctional behavior, but what I am saying is that for the unfaithful who's just completely caught up in this cycle, how can the betrayed diffuse it, make it safer?
You know, in our instance, in that example, probably about 5 minutes later out of the dark, I hear Stephanie say, and I know you were trying to pay me a compliment. I mean, the fact that I quit trying to defend.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I think the unfaithful can do is, if they're not defensive, it does allow the other person to come back toward them. And if they can validate, you know, if the betrayed can validate their mate's perspective, whether or not they agree with it. Okay. I mean, the thing is, it's not even about perspective. When couples can begin to talk about feelings, there's a lot less defensiveness anyway. Because feelings just are. They're not right, they're not wrong. They just are. It's the language of love. And so if they can sit there but validate. I mean, when Steph said, hey, and I know you were trying to pay me a compliment, that's all I needed.
So let's model it, because I think it's vital that our viewers can see how it should work so that they can go back and try it on their own and hopefully not kill each other like Samantha and I almost did several times. So you be Samantha and pick something, and then we'll go from there.
There's nothing wrong with me being upset because you just gave me some more information. If you didn't drip feed stuff, maybe I could get over it. But you keep torturing me by leaving information or giving me information. Why don't you just tell me all of it at once?
So you feel like I've drug you through the mud all over again. And what I'm hearing is you feel like I continue to give you new information, which starts the clock over, which makes you feel everything all over again. Right?
No, it doesn't just make me feel everything all over again. It actually hurts worse, because it's like I start coming up and then you give me more information, and now it's like I sink lower than I've ever been before, and I feel more hopeless.
So I keep stealing any momentum and hope from you, because you can't find any significant hope, because just when you start to, I throw another nuclear bomb.
You got it. That's the problem right there. You got it.
So it's really about being able to, as you said, listen to understand, not listen to defend.
Right. Because most of the time, I believe, when we listen to another person, we do self-centered listening. Because we listen with whether or not we agree with them. We listen with whether we how the defense we're going to make. We don't really seek to understand. We're really just listening to know how to respond.
So as we end this interview, I mean, give some people hope, because I was incredibly defensive, and it just frustrated Samantha to the core. And there was times we were in your office, and sometimes we left your office just frustrated, right? I mean, I remember the time Samantha walked out of the office, and I was stuck there. We still had 20 minutes left, and I just remember looking at you going, we're never going to make it. You keep telling me we're going to make it, Rick, and you're full of crap. We're not going to make it. I remember the drive home with Samantha crying, just going, how are we going to make it? So, I mean, you've sat in thousands upon thousands of meetings like that. Give hope to the couple that's stuck in this cycle. Find the bad guy, the defensiveness. I mean, I remember so vividly how you just feel like she's never going to get it and she's never going to see this. But that's not the case, right?
Right. You know, I think it starts by really making the determination that you're not going to be defensive. I mean, it is a conscious decision, and then you start coming up with a plan of how you're going to stop being defensive. Because for a lot of people, that defensiveness can just be when they begin to flood emotionally. I mean, they're experiencing something. And so, but if you're really serious about stopping it, it may be doing some trauma work with individual work, learning how not to flood. It may be getting a pulse watch. It could be any number of things. Do what's necessary. Practice communication techniques. I've got one couple, one of the things they did I thought was beautiful is they would twice a day practice him saying things to her and then her sitting there working. I mean, it was just practice at not being defensive. And eventually she got to the place when he would start up, because they practiced it so much,
Right.
that she just immediately kind of developed a different response. But she had to really determine that was something she wanted to stop. And then she started doing the work, and he agreed to help her to get to that point. So it starts with, it's not okay to be defensive. I want to stop that regardless of what it's going to take. It's just like smoking, just like anything.
And you can do the you got it at any time. And you would suggest, because you've told me this, but making it easy for you, you suggested to Samantha and I during good moments when we were just
Right.
talking about school, kids, life, whatever, to do the you got it game. Because then it's easy.
Because then it's easy. Because it's like anybody can do it when it's easy. You've got to develop the practice for when you wouldn't want to do it. Right. And once you can practice it in good times too, then you can bring it into the bad times.